Hi there, I'm Wendy McCallum, burnout and alcohol coach and wellness expert, and you're listening to Bite Size Balance, where everyday extraordinary women share their stories, expertise, and wisdom, all in the name of lifting each other up and creating a better life by design. Whether it's wellness, career, relationships, food, alcohol, mindfulness, hormones, or parenting, we talk about all things women's balance. If your life looks great on paper, but it still feels like something's missing, you're in the right place. Welcome to Bite Size Balance.
Hi, everyone. I am doing a solo podcast today, and I'm trying something that I haven't done for a while, which is what I think I'm going to refer to as snack podcasts. So these are going to be shorter podcasts. I'm going to aim to keep them in under a half an hour, sometimes even shorter than that, where I deal with some insular topics. And I'm doing it right now because this is going to air in December when everyone's lives are bonkers and most of us don't have a lot of spare time. So it felt like a good time to get back in the groove of doing these little snack podcasts. I did a few of them in season 1 and season 2, but I haven't really done any yet in season 3. So today I'm going to talk about how to do your own experiment around alcohol and drinking. Now, this is maybe not, probably some of you listening to this thinking this isn't really of interest to me. I'd encourage you to listen anyway, because whatever it is that you struggle with, where you're any area of your life where you're trying to make change, the concepts I'm going to talk about today are applicable to those areas as well. So for example, if you're finding yourself spending too much time on social media these days, or wishing that you were eating a little less sugar at night, or maybe you're really struggling with staying offline and you're spending too much money online shopping, all things that I hear all the time from the women that I work with. Everything I talk about in this podcast around doing an alcohol experiment can be applied to those areas as well. So hopefully this will be relevant to everyone. I really encourage you to keep listening. Before I get into this, I'm going to give you some really, really great suggestions today for how to do it differently this time. If you have been struggling with your relationship with alcohol, or like I said, any of those other common coping mechanisms for busy, overwhelmed women. But what I wanted to let everyone know is that I'm running, probably for the only time in 2023, I am running a coach-led rewind program. That's my 6-week alcohol experiment program for women. I have historically run it in conjunction with Emily Lynn Paulson. I'm running one by myself this year because Emily and I are both really busy and she's got her own things going on. So for the first time ever, I will be running the rewind program as a 6-week coached program. And I am also keeping this group small because I like to coach small groups. So there's a maximum number of seats available. If it's something that you've been waiting for me to open up again, please go grab your seat now. If you're listening to this podcast before January 2nd, you can also get $100 off the price of the program using the code JANREWIND. So this is the time to nab your spot and also get the $100 off. The link for that program is on my website, which is just wendymccallum.com. That's MCCALLUM.com/rewind. All of the details are there. It is an absolutely value-packed program. It is priced incredibly well. And it is, honestly, I sell it as a self-guided program constantly throughout the year, but when I sell it as a coach-led program, it is so much more valuable for some of the reasons that I'm going to be talking about next in terms of how to do your own alcohol experiment. Because of course, everything that I've learned as a coach, but also in becoming alcohol-free myself, has been folded into my own programs because of course I would do that. So everything I'm talking about today is available to you in that rewind program. It starts officially January 6th. The reason I did that is not because I want you to drink your way through the holidays and feel crappy afterwards. It's because I know it's really, really challenging to make big change when there's lots of stuff going on in your life. So I am starting it after the holidays to set everybody up for success. So January 6th is a start date, but the deadline for that $100 off is January 2nd or whenever the seats sell out. So whichever comes first. Okay, I want to talk about an alcohol experiment and the 3 components that I think are really essential to doing it right and having it be truly effective and transformative for you. So what am I talking about when I'm talking about an alcohol experiment? I'm talking about starting to pay attention to your relationship with alcohol and really learning as much as you can about the reasons why you drink and also what's available to you when you don't drink. So an alcohol-free experiment, of course, is a period of time where you make a commitment to not drink so that you can experiment with what it's like to live alcohol-free. Now, this is really hard for women to do. I know that myself for years and years and years, I tried to take breaks from alcohol. And while I could do it for a very short period of time, I never made it to 30 days. In fact, I often didn't even make it to 2 weeks. And the reasons I didn't make it are the opposite of the things I'm going to talk about today. So the approach that I take to an alcohol experiment basically does away with all of the reasons why women so often fail. And I'm putting fail in air quotes if you're listening to this podcast, because there's really no way to do that in a true alcohol experiment. So for me, when I would do those self-guided breaks, I would always have a specific timeline in mind. And all I thought about was how great it was going to be when I could drink again at the end. And the whole time I was doing the break, it was all about just not drinking that day and getting through the day. I didn't incorporate any of the things I'm going to talk about, which I call the 3 C's. I did not incorporate any of the 3 C's, any of the times I tried it. And I am convinced that that's the reason why it didn't work so many times. When I did finally do a really effective, helpful, and transformative alcohol experiment, it was in 2018, so almost 5 years ago. And that alcohol experiment is the first time that I ever actually brought in these 3 things that I'm going to tell you about. And I am very, very confident that those were responsible for me actually having a really great experience with that 30 days. And then actually deciding to just keep it going after that. And lo and behold, here I am almost 5 years later, and I haven't had a drink since. So if you've tried before to take a break from alcohol, whether it's a cleanse or you've done a dry January or sober October, or maybe you've done some other program out there, I want to tell you that the approach that I take is very different from most of those approaches. And if you're curious about it, again, you can go to that page on my website, wendymccallum.com/rewind, and all the details are there. But in particular, these 3 components that I'm going to talk about today are part of that program, and they were part of my approach when I did this. And I think if you learn how to incorporate them into your next experiment, it's going to make a huge difference for you. So the 3 C's start with curiosity. So the first thing that I did differently in my last alcohol experiment, which was the beginning of 5 years of being alcohol-free for me, which I have no intentions of changing because I'm so happy to not have alcohol running the show anymore. The first thing that I did was lean into curiosity. So I had always approached a break with the assumption that it was going to suck. So I always went into any cleanse or any, attempt to kind of convince myself that I didn't have a problem with alcohol by quitting for a number of days. I always went into that assuming it was going to be really, really hard. I was going to feel deprived. I was going to have to miss out on a lot of fun things. My month would not be nearly as pleasant, and that I would struggle with a number of things, including relaxing because I believed I needed alcohol to relax, sleep because I believed I needed alcohol to help me sleep, and also having, meaningful social interactions because alcohol to me was a big part of my social life, or so I thought. So I'd always gone in with all of these assumptions, and I did not ever stop to question whether those might not be true. Instead, I just believed them kind of to be the gospel, and they really informed how I went through those breaks, which meant I was hanging on by my fingernails the entire time, counting down the days until I could have another drink. When I did my last alcohol experiment in January of 2018, I embraced the concept of curiosity for the first time ever. Like, really, you guys, I had a conversation with myself where I got really honest about the assumptions that I was making around alcohol, and also really honest about the fact that they were just assumptions, and that they were based on a body of evidence. And that body of evidence was my drinking history. Because since I was, other than pregnancies, which, were the longest pregnancy I had was my daughter, obviously. So that was the one for the full 9 or 10 months. But all my other pregnancies were usually just a couple of months long. So I had never taken, other than that 10 months with my daughter, I really hadn't taken a long break from alcohol since before I went to university, where I hadn't had a drink for, maybe I'd gone for a week or two before alcohol became problematic for me, but I don't think I'd ever gone for a month for sure. So all of the assumptions I was making around what it was going to be like to not drink were based on my drinking life, right? So for example, this assumption that it was going to suck and that my sleep was going to be terrible and that I wasn't going to be able to relax and it wasn't going to be as much fun was all based on the fact that I had been drinking for the last 30 years or so. And that drinking history had, affected every area of my life. And so this evidence that I needed it to relax was based on the fact that I'd always used it to relax. The evidence that I needed it to have fun was based on the fact that I'd always used it to have fun. But what I realized for the first time was that I actually didn't have any of the other evidence, the non-drinking evidence, the evidence as to what my life was like without alcohol, because I had never given myself the opportunity to experience that and gather that data. So I had always approached every break in the past from the basis of my life as a drinker. And as I like to say to my clients, I only really had half of the deck of playing cards, right? I had the half of the deck that was related to drinking and not the half of the deck around not drinking. So I got really curious and I thought, I wonder if there's a chance I'm wrong about some of these things. And if I'm wrong about some of these things, is there a chance that actually my life without alcohol might be better? And that changed everything for me. And really, that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about curiosity. What if you're wrong? What if all of these assumptions that you're making around alcohol and how important it is for your life are actually incorrect? How will you know? Well, the only way you're going to know is to go out and gather some information on the other side. Get the other half of the deck, right? That's what a true alcohol experiment is all about. It's about gathering the information. I really think of it as a gift that you give yourself, the opportunity to actually get the evidence. I'm an ex-lawyer. I like to call myself a recovered lawyer. So I'm all about the evidence. And honestly, I could do a podcast episode where I tell you all of the amazing things about being alcohol-free and all the things that I see my clients getting for themselves after they decide to leave alcohol behind and all of the things that I got for myself. I'm snapping at my dog because you might be able to hear her in the background scratching at her pillow. I'm trying to record this on a Saturday in my PJs. Anyway, I could tell you all of those things, but you are not going to believe those things for yourself until you actually physically experience them. So the first thing that's critically important in an alcohol experiment with some true potential to shift things and get you moving from fixation on the substance to liberation from the substance is curiosity. And that's why in every program that I do, whether it's one-on-one coaching programs or it's these group programs like Rewind, I'm always focusing in on gathering the data, questioning your assumptions, checking yourself to make sure that the thing that you believe to be as true as the sky is blue is not actually just an assumption based on only one half of the deck of cards. And then actually opening up your mind to the possibility that something different might be available and going into every day of your alcohol-free experiment, looking for what's different and what's better about being alcohol-free. So curiosity is the number one thing. The second C that you need to have is compassion. In particular, self-compassion. You're going to have compassion for other people in your own alcohol experiment because you're going to find probably that you get some questions from other people when you take a break from alcohol that might be a little irritating and aggravating. And you're going to have to probably step into some compassion around stepping into their shoes and trying to imagine what it might feel like to them that you've stopped drinking and how that they might be taking that in terms of a reflection on their own drinking habits. But the main thing you need to have is compassion for yourself in this. Self-compassion is the second C, really, because what you need to do is get out of that blame and shame loop that you've probably been in for a really long time. If you're anything like me, for the years that led up to me finally taking that step to do that, really opening up my mind and getting curious and doing a true alcohol experiment instead of just trying to take a white knuckled break from alcohol. In those years, I was really caught up in the cycle of regret and blame and shame and beating myself up. So I would constantly make rules for myself, as I'm sure many of you have done, where I would say, well, I'm not going to drink between Monday and Thursday. I'll only drink on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or I'm not going to drink until after the kids go to bed. I won't pour a glass until the kids are in bed at, 8:00. Or if I drink, I'm only going to have a maximum of 2 drinks, or I'll only drink when I'm out and not when I'm at home, or I'll only drink, X and I won't drink Y anymore, in an attempt to, change my drinking habits and cut back on the amount that I was drinking and the frequency that I was drinking. But of course, I broke every single one of those rules every time. I might have been able to keep it up for, sometimes a week, but then at some point I would find myself with a really great excuse to break the rule, right? It might be that, well, I didn't, forgot about the fact that we were going out for dinner on Monday night with these great friends of ours who we never get to see, and they love to drink, and we're going to a great restaurant with my favorite wine. So I'll just have a glass then. Right. Or some other reason. I could always come up with a reason. And sometimes I didn't even need a reason, to be honest. I just felt like the pull of alcohol was so strong that I just had to have another glass. So I broke all of those rules. And then, of course, I regretted it the next day. And I spent an awful lot of time beating myself up over the fact that I couldn't get this thing sorted. And the constant conversation in my head was, when something like this, like, what is wrong with you? You can do everything else. You've got a great career. You're a good parent. You're a good friend. You've solved all kinds of problems before in your past. You've overcome all of these things. You're healthy. You exercise regularly. You eat well. What is going on with this? Why can't you get this thing sorted? And sometimes I'd find myself up in the middle of the night Googling, am I an alcoholic, on my laptop downstairs when I couldn't go back to sleep, usually with a dry mouth because I'd had one too many glasses of wine the night before. And oftentimes I'd find myself the next morning trying to make a plan or create some new rule around drinking that might actually help me moderate, which I'm also putting in air quotes. And so that was the opposite of self-compassion. In order to have a really meaningful, fulsome experiment and actually gather the most useful information about the thing that you're trying to change. Again, this could apply to something other than alcohol. You need to stay in self-compassion. So if things don't go the way you wanted them to go, so let's say you have a day where you do end up having a drink when you had made a commitment to not have a drink, or maybe even you just have these overwhelming cravings all day and it's all you think about, and that feels like a step backwards for you. You need to lean into self-compassion. You need to say to yourself, okay, this is happening. I'm noticing it, but I'm not going to judge it. Or that happened. I'm going to learn everything I can from it, but I'm not going to judge it. If something happens, I always say, if you do have what we call a data point in the alcohol experiment, that the type of alcohol experiment that I run, which is based on the This Naked Mind methodology that I'm trained in. If you do have a data point, what we always say about it is it's not a mistake. It's not a failure. It's an opportunity to learn. And I often say it's something that you had to learn. So instead of looking at it with a bunch of regret and shame, instead look at it as, oh, okay, this had to happen. Why did it have to happen? What didn't I know yet that I needed to learn about that trigger or those emotions, or what tools I'm missing, or the power of alcohol? And then we go back and we actually look at it and we pay great attention to everything that happened that day that might have led up to that, the thoughts that you were having around how the drink was actually going to make you feel better or solve a problem for you, and then what it actually did for you that night. Did it actually do that for you? And what were the unintended or unanticipated consequences of that data point? So self-compassion is critically important, because when you are beating yourself up like that every single day, that is stressful. It just creates a bunch of other negative self-talk. It erodes your confidence. It leads to more anxiety, which just gives you more of a reason to want to escape, which means more of a reason to go to that unhealthy coping mechanism of choice. Again, whatever that is for you. So the first one is curiosity. The second one is self-compassion. The third C is community. Now, this is the one that I can't provide in my self-guided Rewind course, but that I can provide really well when I run the coach-led program, because I actually do create a community, because we have live group coaching calls. So in the Rewind program that starts in January, there will be 5 of those. And those group coaching calls are where you get an opportunity to come together with a group of women who are like-minded, who are struggling with the same things. Everybody obviously has their own unique situation. There will be some women in the group who have never taken a break from alcohol. There will be others who have taken breaks in the past. And there will probably be some who are alcohol-free, but are looking just for kind of a mental reset and a little coaching support, and also for this community aspect. And so that community allows you to actually feel, not just know, but feel that you're not alone in this. And that is critically important. And actually, that's the one thing that I really didn't have when I did my first alcohol experiment. And I can see now, just given all of the experience I've had coaching and coaching groups and, leading huge groups for This Naked Mind, but also coaching my own small groups, which I do all the time, the power of community and peer support, and the power of knowing that you're not alone. Of course, you can do some crowdsourcing in a group context, which is amazing, where you can throw something out and say, hey, I'm struggling with this, or this is happening this weekend. My sister's coming. We have this tradition where we always drink this type of wine together when she comes. What should I do? How do I manage this? I really don't want to drink, but I also don't want to hurt her feelings, right? And then you'll have the people in the group will step in and provide you with their own stories of shared experience, and I will be able to provide you with some support and coaching around that. So the community piece is critically important. For probably 3 to 4 years before I stopped drinking, I felt completely alone, 100% alone. Nobody in my circle really talked about it, even though a lot of my friends were drinking as much as I was. It just wasn't a conversation. I don't know if it wasn't, maybe it wasn't bothering them or having the same impact on them in the way that it was me. Maybe it was serving them in a way that it wasn't serving me anymore. I don't know, but I never talked to anybody about this, and it felt very, very lonely. And so slowly since, 2018, I have found some community around this, which has been absolutely amazing. And frankly, I find my community in you guys. So it's one of the great perks, selfishly, of being a coach in this area, is that I get to connect on this issue every day with other women, which is fantastic. But the Rewind program does provide that community only when it's coach-led, though. When it is a self-guided program, then the community is not there, obviously, because you're running through the program yourself, which you can do at other times of the year. But the coach-led version of this will be starting at the beginning of January, like I said at the beginning of this podcast. So those are the 3 C's in an effective alcohol experiment. And they might sound simple, but they're actually critically important. And if you have tried to take a break from alcohol in the past, ask yourself if you've truly embraced all of those. Have you gotten really curious about it? Or has it just been more of a I just have to get through this thing, because if I can get, a dry January under my belt, then that's going to show me that I actually don't have a problem with alcohol and I'm not an alcoholic, which, by the way, you've heard me say before, not a question that even matters. It's not a word we use anymore. It's no longer a diagnosis. And also, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is how you're feeling about alcohol. Is it serving you anymore? Is it taking more than it's giving right now? If so, you deserve the right. You deserve to take a break from this thing. You deserve to see what it's like without it. So curiosity is key. Ask yourself, have I actually done that before? And if you're struggling with some other coping mechanism, ask yourself if you've ever approached it from the place of curiosity before. I've ever gotten a journal and actually paid attention to when my cravings start, what I'm telling myself about them, how it feels to drink a glass of wine, when the effect of that glass of wine starts to wear off, how soon I'm thinking about the next glass of wine, how that wine glass feels. Does it feel as good as the first one did? Spoiler alert, no, nothing ever feels as good as that first glass. And there's a whole body of science behind that I go into in the Rewind program, which is also, a critical part, I think, of a good experiment, is actually learning everything on the other side as well, which frankly, for me, in all those times I was trying to take breaks, I didn't want to know. I did not want to know all of the stuff I know now about alcohol because I was afraid of it. But actually it was incredibly empowering. And so of course I incorporate all kinds of science into all of my programs, and definitely that Rewind program as well. So curiosity is key. Self-compassion, has that really been a cornerstone of your attempts to make change before? Probably not. because women are notoriously terrible at that. And finally, that community aspect. Have you ever done this with other people? Have you ever done it with a coach who knows what she's doing, who's been there? Have you ever done it with a group of other women who are struggling with the same problem? And think about other times where you've made change successfully. Has there been a community there to support you in that? Have you had peers or accountability buddies or people who have also been in the same place that you are? And how much has that impacted your ability to actually successfully make the change? It's so key. So you don't have to do an alcohol experiment with me. You can do your own alcohol experiment. And if you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking, yeah, I really want to get in on that rewind thing, I'm going to sign up for it, but I also want to start my experiment now. I don't want to wait till January. You can do that too. I'm going to encourage you to do an alcohol experiment. If you do join us in the rewind, now, like start it now, get your journal, start making notes, but you don't have to stop drinking right now. You can actually you can gather a ton of really helpful information while you're still drinking. So you can pay attention to those things I was just talking about. How often am I thinking about drinking? How much am I actually drinking? A lot of us don't know because we don't want to know. But that's really empowering information too, because some less, anything less is always an improvement and always something to celebrate. There's value to drinking less, even if it doesn't lead to not drinking at all. So paying attention to how much you're drinking, how it's making you feel, what your beliefs and thoughts are around the role that alcohol plays in your life, why you think you can't let it go, or it'll be really, really hard to take a break from it. And then also starting to lean in and get curious around the things that might be available to you if you stopped drinking. Some of these are going to be really obvious to you, probably. Like you probably get the fact that it will be nice to not wake up with a low-grade hangover every day, or that you probably have some more energy if you aren't drinking, or it might lead to less of those middle of the night wakings where you're worried and that hamster wheel's going in your brain. But some of them are going to be things that you can't see yet, and that's okay. That's what the experiment is for. So I just wanted to put this podcast out there as a little quick snack-sized podcast for anyone who's trying to make change in an area that they've been struggling in the past. Again, I would love it if you join me in the Rewind program. It is incredible value for the price. Again, you can get $100 off right now. So it's kind of a no-brainer. It is only a couple $100 more to do it guided with me with the 5 group coaching sessions than it is to do it self-guided. So we're thinking about doing an experiment, do this one, because it's so much more impactful to have me there as a coach and also to have that community aspect, as I just talked about. Who's the program for? Well, it's for any women. So it is a female only, women only program, or people who identify as women only program. And it's available for anyone who is starting to get curious about drinking and whether it's serving them anymore or not, and would like to take a break. But it's also available to anyone who's taken a break in the past and is currently drinking again. And it is available to anyone who's worked with me. If you've worked with me one-on-one, or you've been in my groups in the past and you need like a little reset or a reboot, or you just love to like get connected again with a community of women, this is a really great way to do it. As I always say, repetition is key. So hearing information from me more than once is how your brain is actually going to mark it as important. And that's what's going to help you actually retrieve it in the moment that you need it, when you are really trying not to drink. And so if you've done this with me before, you've heard me talk about these things before, there's just going to be added value in hearing some of this stuff again. And obviously the coaching sessions are always completely different. So even if you've done the rewind before with me, coach guided, maybe you've done it with me and Emily in the past, and you want to join in again, I'd love to have you. I think that, the more times we hear these things and experiment, the more we learn. And the more we learn, the more empowered we are. My goal for everyone that I work with, and for everyone listening to this podcast, whether I work with you or not, is to get you to a place where you feel confident that you're making an informed decision about drinking. So an informed decision about the role that alcohol is playing in your life. If you're only making your decisions about drinking based on your history as a drinker, which is where I was 5 years ago, it's not an informed choice. I always say that's alcohol. Alcohol is making the choice for you. So a true alcohol experiment that's rooted in curiosity and self-compassion and has that really invaluable community element, is an opportunity for you to gather the other half of the deck, get yourself to a place where you now know what it's like to be alcohol free. You actually now know whether you sleep better, whether you're capable of relaxing, whether life is more fun or less fun with or without alcohol. And now you can actually make an informed decision as to whether you choose to include alcohol in your life going forward and in what capacity. So that's it for this podcast, a little snack size. I'm going to wrap it up because I don't want to go too long, and I'm going to have another snack size one for you this month. I hope everyone is enjoying their holidays so far and trying to stay as low stress as possible. I know it's a tough time for all of us. Try to care a little less, guys. Try to do a little less. Ask yourself, what'll happen if you don't do that one thing? And if you're not sure, experiment with it. You'll often be surprised, as we have said many times on this podcast, you'll be surprised about how little people care when you don't do some of the things that you think you absolutely have to do that you actually don't really enjoy doing. So I wish you all a really happy holiday season, and I will be back next week. Again, if you're looking for info on that program, go to wendymccallum.com/rewind, and the coupon code for $100 off is JANREWIND. Bye, everyone.
You've been listening to Bite Size Balance with your host, Wendy McCallum. As a certified Naked Mind coach, I help busy women like you find freedom from alcohol. If you're starting to question your relationship with alcohol, you'll want to listen to my free 3-part video series where I address the top 3 myths around why you think you need to drink. Sign up now at www.wendymccallum.com/myths. That's www.wendymccallum.com/myths.